Hello, and welcome. I really should turn on some lights. Should be all right, I think, maybe. Welcome. It is Tuesday, September 2nd, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. It is your time wherever you are. And welcome to Community Conversations, as always. We'll give it a couple of minutes to let people get in and situated. I may turn on a light. Stand by. I could have gotten up, but why? Yay. Rolling. Hey, Robert Spence. Hey, Cash. Good to see you all. I know it's been a long minute. So hope everyone is doing well. And no question starting out. Although raspberry ripple sounds delicious. Is that a real flavor or did you make that up? That sounds good. Hey, Nick. Yeah, absolutely. Here's my email. Feel free to shoot me an email. And I am happy to give it. It'll come through as IOCDF, but this should work. There we go. So that's my email. Just email me there, and same anyone. Feel free if you have any questions or want to say something more private outside of this conversation. We definitely can have that conversation about this conversation, about that conversation, and all the conversations. We'll give it maybe another minute, but in the meantime, how's everyone doing? Hi, Jenna. Hi, Natalie, and thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Yeah, I'll get to your question in 1 second. Oh, in fact, I will star it just to make sure we see it. Hi, Ella from Australia. Have a seat. Yeah, and I will definitely star your question. We'll get started in just 1 second. Hi, Stacey Rosenthal Young. So if you're just joining us, welcome. We'll just get started momentarily, get through the housekeeping, and then we can get into questions. But excited to be back. I know it's been a minute, maybe June actually, since I was last. No, that's not true. I was thinking no, but maybe end of July perhaps. Excuse me. So all right, well let's get rolling here. So and in the meantime, as I'm reading this, if you have questions, please be sure to load them into the chat, and we'll get rolling here. So my name is Ethan. For those of you that don't know me, this community conversation is intended to serve as educational content and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or locate or contact a local clinician. The IOCDF is also not a crisis hotline. Lifeline, if you are in a crisis or ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please call the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. And you can also go to your local emergency room or call 911. As always, we want to be kind and respectful to everyone, as this is a safe space. At least we try to make it so. Keep in mind that this is being broadcast on all kinds of social media platforms and being recorded. So keep that in mind as you ask personal questions. But as always, we are here to support one another and be as respectful as possible. Excuse me. I may be clearing my throat some as we go through this, as I am just getting over bronchitis. So I apologize to those that get to hear scary sounds. And so with that, let's jump into some questions, and I'm happy to fill everyone in on life, but please feel free. So let me just make sure. I know Cash always sets the tone early. You are a bad person, Cash. Okay. So Natalie, how do you find the motivation to do ERP? Because I've been struggling for years. Also, Ethan, I love you. Well, that's very sweet, Natalie. I love you too. It's a great question. So I think that is the question, right? Motivation is really difficult, especially when we're struggling with OCD and struggling to do ERPs. So I think the first thing I want to say is perhaps redefine what motivation looks like. So I think when we think of motivation, we think of this strong desire to do something, right? And so I feel extremely motivated to go out with my friends today, or play, or hang out, or do whatever. Or you feel empowered to get better, to fight your OCD. And I think that we go through those phases of feeling that way, but also we go through other feelings, other phases of feelings, other um, unmotivated times. And what does that look like? So when I said maybe let's redefine, what does motivation look like? I say that because you're actually asking the question, you've been struggling, but you're aware of that. So you're not happy with the fact that sometimes it's hard to engage in ERPs because of motivation. So I would start to look at, what does motivation mean to you? And even if you aren't motivated, can you still do it? So the first thing is, if you wake up and you have a day where you're just not feeling it, you're not feeling motivated, you're not in the mood, you're tired, I think that's a good some good first objectivity and insights into your own experience of what's going on. But then you have to ask yourself, what am I gaining by doing my ERPs? And what am I not gaining by not doing my ERPs? And the reality of it is, of course, if we do them, we're working on our OCD, we're getting better, we're making value-driven decisions. And so I would encourage and challenge anyone that perhaps isn't feeling motivated to do it anyway. And I know it can be really hard and really scary, but I would also ask you, what other things have you done day to day that you may not be motivated to do, but you do them anyway? I'm sometimes not motivated to take a shower, or brush my teeth, or put on a clean shirt, or go for a walk, or right, the list goes on, but we do it. We do it because maybe we have to, maybe we know it's what's good for us. Maybe it helps with our physical well-being, our mental well-being. I went to doctors today. I did not want to go. I did not feel motivated to go, but I knew that it was healthiest for me, right? So feelings in association with OCD can be really, really tricky. I actually think feelings are sort of the strongest enemy to ourselves as it relates to OCD only, because feelings oftentimes dictates our actions. It dictates how much we believe in the OCD thought. If we feel it, it must be true. And I think feelings can be very, they can be very misleading. So I would encourage you, on days when you wake up and you don't feel motivated, to honor that. We can appreciate that, and that's a very valid feeling. But then to say to those feelings and that emotion, I hear that and that's nice, but I'm going to do it anyway, even if it feels like just carrying hundreds of pounds of weights, trudging through pancake syrup, because it's what I need to do. So, Natalie, if you're in a place where you don't feel like you're where you want to be in terms of wellness or OCD management or maintenance or recovery, I would feel extremely optimistic, because perhaps you've touched on something that is the barrier to your next evolution of wellness. And if that's the case, then don't make it about motivation. Make it about habit. Make it about, because it's the value-driven thing to do. Make it because it's what you need in order to get to that next level, right? And so when it becomes about that, I'm not saying you need to be rigid. I'm not saying you need to beat yourself up if you don't. But I think that when we reframe what motivation looks like, it does not have to look like an overexuberance of energy to, well, I want to do this today. You can not want to do it, but you can still do it. Just like I'm sure there's many things in life day to day that you don't want to do or you don't feel motivated to do, but you do them anyway. And you have to include ERPs and treatment for OCD into that basket, right? So am I perfect at that? No. Do I compulse? Sure. But do I not compulse more than I compulse? Yes. And do I try to engage in value-driven behaviors and healthy behaviors in regards to managing my OCD and related disorders? I try my best, whether I want to or not. So, I think that I'll give you a perfect example. I'll just be super real with you. I had some intense doctor's appointments today. As many of you know, I have health anxiety. Some of the things were really triggering to hear. And I'm fine. I just need some tests and things. Really triggering to hear. And typically I want to shut down. So when I got home, I told Katie, it's like, I can't do the live stream tonight. I just can't, I'm just not in a place. But as I sort of checked in with my own motivation to be like, I don't have to be motivated to do this. I want to share time with you all and be present and, put things away for an hour and try to find a reframe on the situation. So was I motivated? No. And I hope you don't take offense to that. I was not motivated to be on tonight. What I am doing is what's value driven to me. I made a commitment. I made a promise that I would be here. And so if I can be here, which I can, I'm going to be here and support all of you. And I know in turn, you'll support me, right? So it's mutually beneficial. So just being real and candid about times where we may not feel like it, or we may not have the motivation that we wish we had, that makes it easier to engage in it. That sometimes we just have to do it anyway. Opposite action. And that's as simple as it gets down to. And then we do. So hopefully that was helpful, Natalie. And thanks for asking your question. Okay, let's see here. So Ella, and hey from Australia. So I guess it's midday tomorrow. Welcome, greetings from the past, or hello from the future. I've had OCD since I was 10. I'm 23 now. Is ERP helpful for everyone? I know it is the gold standard. It is the gold standard of treatment. It is sort of first line, along with medications is recommended now. It's not for everybody, but sort of medications and ERP is the gold standard of treatment, or first line, as they say. Does it work for everybody? No, not necessarily. OCD is one of the most treatable mental illnesses, although it is stubborn and difficult and painful. Sometimes when I heard someone say that to me, I was like, well, great, excellent that it's so treatable. I think they just mean that it responds to treatment. I don't think it necessarily means that it's easy to treat, which it is not. With ERP, it is the gold standard of treatment. What that means is, from a research perspective, is that 60 to 70% of individuals who engage in ERP do get better. That doesn't mean that everyone gets better, and that's for a number of reasons. It could just be that you don't respond to ERP in a way that professionals would hope. Perhaps the individual, the provider that's giving you the ERP and teaching you isn't a good fit for you, or is describing it in a way that doesn't resonate with you. There's literally 1,000 reasons why ERP may or may not work. And, there's not really a standardization of care across everyone. So, I mean, that kind of is a crapshoot, in a sense, which is why there's other modalities of treatment, whether those treatments are acceptance commitment therapy or ICBT or dialectical behavioral therapy, which isn't indicated for OCD, but it's oftentimes helpful with emotional regulation. So generally, ERP is really effective, but there are other modalities of treatment and other biological treatments, such as TMS or ketamine. Now, I'm not a professional, so I'm not, other than saying that ERP is a gold standard, it works for a lot of folks. I'm not sitting here saying one or the other or making recommendations. What I am saying is my own lived experience perspective is that ERP didn't work for me early on either. And acceptance commitment therapy really helped me engage in ERP in a way that was beneficial and helpful. And so generally, if someone is engaged in ERP and, isn't responding, in a way, I think we want to look at that and find out the reasons why. I will tell you that many times individuals are not responding to ERP, not because the ERP doesn't work. There's some other reason. Maybe it's the provider. Maybe it's where you are in your own life, or how much you're surrendering to the treatment process, or your willingness to change, right? There's a lot of reasons why, depending on where you are in your own OCD journey, that ERP may or may not work. And it isn't always because the modality of treatment isn't effective. For me, it took a couple years to get to a place where suddenly ERP became really effective for me. And everybody's struggle and story with OCD is completely unique. The OCD isn't unique. That is the same. We all have OCD as OCD, and maybe it manifests differently. But whether you respond to ERP or not, or medication or not, doesn't mean that your OCD is different than everyone else's. It simply means that your experience and journey is different. And so things have to be tailored and nuanced to try to determine how to get through, right? But at the end of the day, OCD is OCD and it's treated with ERP. And within that, then there's, it breaks down into specifics and things like that. So it is the gold standard. It doesn't mean that everybody gets better from it, and at which time, they'll determine. But I always encourage people to really reflect inward. If you've done ERP and it didn't work, or you're doing ERP and you're not seeing the gains that you want, I always want to first encourage individuals to look and see, are you really engaging in the treatment? Are you getting the support you need from your therapist? Are you challenging yourself? Are you really surrendering to that fear and uncertainty? Are you living an uncertain lifestyle in regards and response to your fears and feelings? Are you really willing to go there and just submit, right? Because if you're not, if you're unintentionally manipulating yourself into, oh no, I'm totally embracing this and I'm not afraid to feel the feelings and get real anxious and all that stuff, and just a little bit of what they call white knuckling, which is just kind of gritting your teeth and bearing it instead of really embracing the anxiety and all the crud that comes with it, can make improvement slow and even halt improvement altogether. You can be doing ERP, but if you're not engaging in it fully, you may not get better, right? So before we move on to other modalities of treatment, I want to always ask those questions. At least what I've found is helpful in my 15 years of advocating now. And when people ask me, hey, look, I'm doing ERP, it's not really working, I'll start with, well, what is your experience like? And, are you really just surrendering to this thing? Are you willing? Well, now that I think about it, no, I'm kind of holding on here. I'm kind of holding on there. I'm kind of afraid to let go. And I sort of do it, or I kind of do it. ERP is most effective when it is black and white. In this world of black and white thinking for individuals with OCD, right? And we have to search and find these gray areas because it's so hard for us to see anything other than all or nothing. The treatment, in my mind, is all or nothing, which is, we're going to dive in. We're going to embrace this thing. We're going to just go in, head first to the deep end. And it doesn't mean not give ourselves compassion and grace if we compulse or do whatever. But at least the intention and the mindset is, I'm going all in on this thing, and I'm going to trust what my providers are telling me, even though it's really scary. It doesn't make sense. I don't quite understand it. But but with that being said, only you and your provider can determine what is best for you and what's working for you. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm probably really behind on comments. And Stacy wrote in, hi, Stacy, I'm anxious doing peer support and have cut some rituals. And he said, you can be more anxious at first because you are depriving the OCD of what it wants. So I'm more anxious than normal. That is 100% right. Same with any of these treatments or therapies. The OCD gets worse before it gets better. We're depriving the fire of oxygen, right? So it wants to hit back. It's fighting to survive. And in doing that, it brings it closer to you. And what can you do when it gets closer to you? Well, you can hit it. It's in range now, right? So it will fight back harder at first. And that can be scary and intimidating. But I always see it as an opportunity to really give it a punch. Tell it to go F off, right? And then you will see after the ramp up, the slow decline as it gets quieter and quieter. And when you see that happening, similar to like when you start to lose weight, when you first start exercising, I wouldn't know anything about that, but I'm saying I've heard the rumors that as you start to see the progress, you obviously are willing to make yourself more and more uncomfortable because it's working. So, hi, Isastasia. It's good to see you. Watching from super rainy Mexico City. Such a beautiful city. Is rain common there? I would imagine it rains there. Since it's a subtropical climate. I really want to rewatch this Load of Towels again, but it is just a thought. And isn't that thought so powerful and convincing? And even the thought about the thought is just a thought. And the thought about the thought about the thought is just a thought. And the thought that I'll never get better from this because the thoughts keep coming back is also just a thought. And that is sort of the illusion that has to be demystified, right? Is even your thoughts about the thoughts are thoughts. So, what if I never get better? What if this keeps happening? This is something new. I'm having this intrusive thought. And it's all thoughts. They don't mean anything. They're just thoughts, and thoughts aren't facts. Even though your OCD can convince you of it, because then you have the feelings. And if I'm feeling it, then it must be true because I'm thinking it and feeling it. And there's also sort of this thought action fusion, which is when you have a thought and you automatically assume that, well, I had the thought, so it must happen. It must be true. There must be an action associated with it. But the more we recognize that a thought is just a thought is just a thought, the better off we'll be. And I always use the example, close your eyes. And I'm going to get to questions, so we're not going to play this exercise, but I would ask you to close your eyes and really intently think, I'm a banana. And I would encourage you to think this with all your heart and all your might, and open your eyes a minute later. And I hate to tell you, but I've yet to meet anyone that turned into a banana, because it's just a thought. And I kind of try to remind myself when I'm having obnoxious and intrusive thoughts, when I'm having intrusive thoughts, that I'm a banana. That's the thought. I'm a banana. And it's real scary and it can raise anxiety levels, but I'm a banana. Until I have other facts or other proof to tell me otherwise, I'm a banana. And that's what I try to translate any loud, obsessive thoughts in my head. I try to remind myself, I'm a banana thoughts. Okay, we can be okay with those until we know something different. We appreciate that, Ella. Yep, I absolutely agree with you. It's true. Most people don't understand OCD, but we're trying to change that, right? With education and advocacy, and the IOCDF is doing training institutes, and everybody's working extremely hard to make sure that people do understand what OCD is, so people can get diagnosed and treated much earlier and not, go through the decades and decades of pain and suffering. Oh my gosh, did you pay me a compliment? There's got to be something snarky after this, Cash. Are you feeling okay? Do you have fever? What's going on? I'll take that. And I do. I'm very, we should do a meditation. I'll put on a mic. Mike doesn't go here. Mike goes here. I'll do a mic and speak real softly and calm. You haven't heard relaxation. Hi, Donna. Anxiety and Treatment Center of Florida is in the house. Dr. Jason Spielman, good to see you, sir. My wife sending some love. And thank you, Isastasia. I appreciate that. Hi, Ethan, and hi, Emil. What response prevention tips would you give to stop rumination, even when it feels so wrong to not try to figure things out? That's a great question, right? We always want to figure it out. It feels irresponsible to not figure it out. So, some tips would be willing to feel irresponsible. Be willing to let it be whatever it is. And of course, this takes practice, and ideally you're working with a provider. But rumination is really hard because, your brain just starts. It feels very, very automatic, and so what does that mean? I think that the first thing we have to do is recognize when we are ruminating, right? So you may not be able to catch yourself out of the gate thinking, I'm going to ruminate now. Start in 3, 2, 1. That's not a thing a lot of times, right? So the first thing to do is notice when you're ruminating. So maybe a minute in, you catch yourself. You're like, I'm trying to figure this thing out. Well, then what does that mean? Well, the next thing is to say to myself, I don't need to figure it out. I'm going to live with the uncertainty. I'm going to live with all the anxiety that comes with not trying to figure it out. I'm willing to make a mistake. I'm willing to be irresponsible, and I'm willing to trust that this is my OCD. And if I get it wrong, I'll deal with it then. And then you want to come back to the moment. That is the goal. And with rumination, especially this practice, it's exercise. You have to keep choosing to noticing that you're doing it and then coming back to the moment. And it won't be easy. It's like meditation, right? Your thoughts try to get in the way and you try to become present again. This is exactly the same thing. Your goal is to see how many times you can get present. It isn't to say, oh my God, I eliminated these thoughts completely. I stopped ruminating when I noticed myself ruminating and I was great the rest of the day. I also don't want you to beat yourself up when you're like, I spent all day trying to come back to the moment. That is the win. If you are ruminating and struggle with rumination, and I know so many do, I did, The goal is to, how many times can I come back to present? How many times can I be mindful and be here, whether you're reading a book, having a conversation with friends, watching a movie, whatever it is, how many times can I come back to doing that thing? And even if you're 30, 40% present and 60% still in your head and you're going back and forth, those are wins. Those are really big wins. And you're training your brain to recognize that it is okay to ignore this misinformation and this alarm in your head that's saying, you must review this, you must figure this out, or everyone will die, or whatever your fear is, right? So I would practice on coming back to the moment, being kind, being compassionate, being gentle with yourself, and reminding yourself that the win is how many times you come back to the present and stay in that present moment. You could do it 150 times during the day, but guess what? That's a win, right? Because if we compare that to, I ruminated all day and missed everything, that's worst case scenario. And we've all been there and done that too. So, you know, that's the ideal. And then as you practice that, as that muscle becomes stronger, you'll become way more adept, and you'll be able to be like, gosh, there's something in the back of my head and it is really messing with me. It's really making me upset or scared, but I can also be here now and engage in some meaningful way. And it may not be 100%, but who's ever at 100%, whether you have OCD or not? You work all day, you do this thing, you do that thing, you take care of your kids or cats or whatever. You got things on your mind. You know, I don't know that I'm wired to be 100% present all the time. I'm worrying about something, even if it isn't OCD related. So I think we have to give ourselves a lot of compassion there as well. But for the most part, start that exercise of being willing to sit with, maybe you won't figure it out. And you know what? You don't want to figure it out. It doesn't matter. OCD will convince you that you must figure this out. And, you know, in reality, life isn't a problem to be solved. It's an experience it's a journey to be experienced. I'm stealing the quote from someone else, hence I didn't remember it. But the bottom line is that, you know, you will know when it's something you need to figure out. And if you're uncertain or you're unsure, or you're uncomfortable, or there's questions, or is this something I should pay attention to? Generally, if it's a question, it's related to OCD. So, and especially if you're in treatment or you're in the process of really fighting this thing, you know, I would really make it a practice I don't need to figure it out. And I'm going to be okay with that. And that sets you up so well for life, right? Because there's so much that is not in our control. There's so much uncertainty out there. And I think the less we try to figure things out and the more we just try to do and be okay figuring things out when something happens. Right? So I am willing to take a chance. And when if and when I have to cross that bridge, I will trust that I can figure it out then. And I will trust the people around me to support me in figuring it out then. And until then, I'm going to sit with all the, I was going to say sit with the ick, but I'm going to stick with the ick until the ick goes away. And then I'll be ickless. And ickless is good. You're welcome, Natalie. Jody wrote, I'm very deep intrusive thoughts that pop into my head every 2 to 5 seconds. It's absolutely relentless. I had a bad reaction to SRI that caused this mess I'm in. I feel, oh, Jody, I'm so sorry to hear that. Please don't feel hopeless. You are not alone. I think so many of us have been in that position where the intrusive thoughts are just loud and screaming. And as you said, relentless is the perfect word. They just feel like you're beating you down. I know it feels like you're sort of in this, I don't want to tell you how you're feeling, but I relate to bad reactions to SSRIs, going from one to the other, trying to figure this out, your brain chemistry. And it can feel hopeless, but I want you to know that A, you're not alone, B, there is hope, and C, it will get figured out. It really, really will. If you're working with somebody that put you on an SSRI, sometimes it feels like trial and error, and it's a shitty feeling. It really, really is. But simultaneously, and you can many times feel like a lab rat. I know I did. But in talking with a lot of psychiatrists that really care about individuals with OCD, you know, just the class of medications, they really don't know, you know, what one medication is going to do for someone. And there's some tests that they can do to see if, you know, you tolerate it or don't tolerate it. But beyond that, what dosage is effective, which SSRI or other class of medication is going to work, you know, really don't know. Also, you know, Jody, are you in treatment? Are you in therapy for your OCD as well? That can really help simultaneously in conjunction with the meds. But the IOCDF The website is an amazing resource of, and you may have asked a question already. Excuse me, but there's tons of resources, tons of information, resource directory. You can always reach out to them with any questions that you have. But know that we're here to support you. And if you have any other questions, if you haven't asked them already, we still have a half hour. So please feel free, Jody, to ask a question. I'll try to do my best to answer it. Chad Talley in the house. I don't want to go too much, but Chad's really been through it. We could all just send some love and prayers to his family and especially his wife. She's been going through a really difficult time. Please do that. Chad is a wonderful member of this community. We love him. We love his family, and he's been through some really crappy stuff recently. I think things are on the up and up, but if you could just send him some love, I think that would be much appreciated. And I hope you're well, Chad. Oh, that's a great question, Cash. If you're an alcoholic, do you mainly to OCD in mind what should you deal with first? So substance use disorder and OCD are quite common, unfortunately, and it's a nasty combination. It really is. It's too easy to self-medicate the intrusive thoughts, and with alcohol, drugs, you name it. Ideally, you want to treat both simultaneously, and this has been a topic of conversation for the last 10 to 15 years, at least on my radar, and I'm sure it was talked about before, but the lack of options, well, I should say there have been a significant lack of options to treat both simultaneously. Most of the time, if you want to get into an OCD program, you have to be sober. And, in order to be sober, you have to treat your OCD, right? So it's been this chicken or egg thing. Only fairly recently have there been programs opening up. Dr. McGrath, I think, opened the first residential program in Chicago that treats substance use and OCD simultaneously. And it's a really personal question, so I don't know that I can answer that. If the alcohol use is mainly due to OCD, it makes sense to treat the OCD first. But I'm also not a clinician, so don't go by what I say. There are lots of instances where, again, people need to become sober before they, can engage in effective. It's tricky, right? Because if you're going to do exposure response prevention, the goal is to feel the anxiety. And if you're medicating the anxiety with alcohol, for instance, then the ERP doesn't work, right? But simultaneously, I know lots of people that are in treatment for substance use, and their OCD is just going out of control. So again, it's a really nasty, harsh situation. By no means is it not treatable. It's totally treatable. But it's a great question, and probably a good question for a provider, psychiatrist, clinician. If you can treat both simultaneously, that's great. But I think, Cash, I don't know if you're speaking for yourself, but if you recognize that OCD is the primary diagnosis and that you're drinking, or the drinking, whoever it is a result of the OCD, and you feel like, if I get these intense thoughts, emotions under control, then, the self-medication will subside, then that's a reasonable assumption. And I think that's good insight on your part. Nikki Bratley in Dublin. How are you, Nikki? It's good to see you. Matt Bannister in his house. I sound ridiculous saying his house. There we go. Megan finally comes home tomorrow after almost 3 months. That's amazing. Like I said before, just everybody send Megan some love. She's been through it, but she is strong, and her story has been inspiring. And it's his story to tell. But it's been, my heart is gone out. But you guys are tough, and we appreciate you, Chad and Megan. Robert, makes sense, but why will never be cured of all? I'm not physically. Oh, okay. Sorry. I probably wouldn't have shared that. Sorry, Cash. Ooh, what did I say? All right. I'll take kinky. Let's see here. This doesn't have a name, so I just want to read it first to make sure I'm not posting troll stuff. Okay, this is fine. So a LinkedIn user wrote, "Hi, Ethan. I used to have thoughts about disturbing actions from about a year ago, but ever since I went to my vacation to India a month ago, I'm worried that I could have snapped and I just zoned out and possibly forgot. How do I combat this when the themes of my new subtypes of OCD, or so I hope, keep changing? That is so common. It is so uncomfortable and disconcerting, and just all around super icky. This idea of what if I forgot? I did the same thing. It completely related to something different, but what if I forgot and did this thing, whatever it is? In my case, it was self-harm oriented and didn't remember. Again, excuse me. And then the subtypes, as I'm sure, this idea of whack-a-mole, which they change and they morph, and you feel like you're just, okay, I just got this one thing under control and now I've got to fight something else. So first of all, here you relate to you, and I'm sure so many folks here do. I think on the changing of subtypes and morphs, I kind of said at the beginning, OCD is OCD is OCD. And this is where ERP treatment is really effective, is that obviously the subtypes are different. We all have different subtypes. They manifest in different ways. Our compulsions are geared around whatever those subtypes are. But when people say that OCD is OCD and the treatment is ERP, what that means is that it all involves sitting with the discomfort, embracing uncertainty, being willing to live with the chance that something may or may not happen, and making value-driven decisions. That is the same regardless of whatever subtype you have or symptoms or the way your OCD manifests. That does not change, right? So if that doesn't change, that means that ERP and other modalities of treatment are the skeleton key to treating OCD. So let's say you go to residential treatment, and let's say, we'll use my example. I was afraid of bashing my head in and creating a brain bleed. I know it sounds crazy. I'm sure you also know it's OCD, right? So I go to residential and I engage in a treatment program and a behavioral treatment protocol that is designed for me to do ERPs around hitting my head, right? It's very, very specific. And I do this, and I spend 2.5 months of, first pretending I hit my head, and then tapping my head, and then banging my head or whatever. And in the 2.5 months, it doesn't scare me anymore. And I'm not worried about it. And then I go home, and then I walk past a can of Lysol, and what if I poisoned my food accidentally, right? It's a whole new thing. Yes, they were teaching me that, to become more comfortable, maybe hitting my head, maybe not being my head. But what they were really teaching me is living with uncertainty. You can insert any subtype or symptom into that formula. And yes, it's nuanced, and I'm not saying one size fits all. That is not the case. What I am saying, though, is the formula is we are going to accept the possibility that X, Y, and Z might happen while simultaneously moving forward with the discomfort, making value-driven decisions, and doing value-driven actions, right? That's what I was being taught. I wasn't being taught that if I hit my head and if I hit myself in the head, I may have a brain bleed. I may not have a brain bleed. I can trust that I won't. I'm not looking for certainty. That's not the point of ERPs. Or I am looking for, right? It was this underlying principle. So in essence, we created a foundation for me to lean on when whatever pops up that's OCD related. I can then turn to that education and go, okay, I'm going to take out the head hitting, and I'm going to plug in the COVID, or I'm going to take out the germs and I'm going to plug in the just right, or I'm going to take out the just right and plug in the religious scrupulosity. And guess what all of those things have in common? I'm not going to figure it out. I'm going to sit with the uncomfort. I'm going to move forward anyway. I'm just going to be okay not being okay, right? And practice that over and over and over and over again until I start functioning in the way that I want to function. And not only that, but not just function, but live in joy and health and serenity and peace, and find the beautiful parts of life that I was unable to find or reach when OCD was just wreaking havoc on my head. So that is the answer to themes and subtypes, right? Is this treatment isn't really about your theme or subtype. It's about treating OCD, and OCD is all kinds of flavors, right? And while the treatment in and of itself might be very specific to what it is, the precepts and the principles are exactly the same. Giving banana splits a whole new meaning. I totally agree with you. Yeah, that's a great question, Eileen. So it took me, well, I didn't even know I needed ERP. I was diagnosed at 17 or 18. I got treatment at 31. I don't think fortunately now a lot of people are talking about ERP. The IOCDF is much bigger than it was 15 years ago. But I didn't even know I needed the treatment. Once I did, we were able to connect with some folks through the IOCDF, but the IOCDF has a resource directory. I'm just going to find the link real quick. IOCDF resource directory. And you can plug in getting started with the resource directory. I think this is it, or this will take you there. But it is, I closed. Hold please. I lost my screen. Where are you people? There you are. Hi. Let me just post this here. So you can start with the resource directory, which you can put in state, city, zip code, country, whatever, and it will list off individuals, providers that treat OCD. I will tell you that just because they're on the IOCDF resource directory doesn't mean that they are amazing or fantastic therapists. It means that as far as the IOCDF has learned and is concerned, they do ERP. With that, you want to interview your therapist. There's also an amazing article on the IOCDF website, which you should be able to navigate from the resource directory. Ask an OCD therapist, IOCDF. Let me see how to find the right therapist. I'm not reading these, so okay, this should take you where you want to go. So once you find who you want, there's some great articles about questions to ask them. What kind of treatment do they do? How long have they been doing it for? Are they certified? Where do they go to school? Et cetera, et cetera. And so you definitely want to do your own detective work to make sure, but it's a good place to start. And, if you don't see something or you're looking for something or in your area, you can always give them a call or an email and they'll try to do their best to get you connected. You can also reach out to me. I put my email at the top of the chat. I'll do it again. I don't think these comments go to LinkedIn, but if you have questions, let me just flag this because I'm going to need to scroll down. I'm way behind on comments, but I will post this. And that's not right. Ignore. That's an extra O. That's what happens for typing fast. If you guys want to email me, if you have other questions, there we go. That's my email. So if you can see that, whatever platform you're on, please feel free to write it down. Please feel free to write it down and shoot me an email if you have any questions or anything like that. Okay. Let me scroll back up to where I was. Oop, too far. There we were. Okay. Ashwin Charles, it's good to see you. Hi, Ethan. I'm worried that I could have snapped and acted out thoughts and just zoned out and possibly forgot. How do I combat this when all I do is review old text messages and reviewing the past? We just talked about this. You're in luck. We just talked a lot about this. So if you have additional questions in regards to this question, let me know. But we literally just talked about this. So hopefully what I just said is helpful. But if you have a follow-up, don't hesitate to ask. Okay, let's see here. Lots of compliments. Thank you all so much. You're amazing. Mislav is 100% Kurt. I feel certain that you were killed by Dexter. I'm not 100% certain because it could all be a dream and I can't prove it. That is true. That is true. Let's just stick with that. We are uncertain. I feel like I was killed by Dexter, but you know what? Maybe I wasn't. I mean, if they come out with an episode that suddenly he's been dreaming this whole time, I'm alive and well. Or did I even exist to begin with? Which is why we just want to move forward and do stuff and not think too deeply. This is great from Kim. Hey, Kim, it's good to see you. I don't think the ick ever goes away. Whether we learn to tolerate and coexist with the ick without letting it completely control our lives. Stick with the ick and run, walk, crawl towards one's values. Beautifully said, Kimberly. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And Zach, I agree with you. I think substance can inhibit learning and OCD treatment. Now I know where we are in the chat or in the comments. It can, and that's what's tricky, right? What do you treat first? You treat one, the other spirals, and vice versa. That's why co-occurring treatment is ideal. If you can start to mitigate the usage of whatever it is you're self-medicating with while you engage in treatment, that is ideal. But I know that's not always realistic. Oh, thank you, R. You're so welcome. Yes. Giving the love to Megan. So much love to Chad, Megan. Oh, okay, great. No, I didn't think you were a trail. No, I didn't think you're. We've had trolls in the past, so I just wanted to read it prior. But good. I'm glad I answered your question. Thank you for. You could have stayed. Anyway, all good. Perfect. That was a Scottish accent again, Ethan. And call yourself an actor? No. I was an actor. I am now 11 years retired, and I never claimed to do accents well. In fact, if you ask my mother, she always thought I was terrible at accents, which was really concerning because I thought I was great. So anyway, glad she didn't burst my bubble. But I did. I don't know that I have everything I ever did in film or TV. I don't think I ever had an accent. At theater, I had some accents, and they were also apparently terrible, even though I thought they were great. Oh, thank you, Vivita. Thank you. And I do apologize for it's been a minute. As I said, I had bronchitis, horrible bronchitis for like 2.5, 3 weeks. Didn't have a voice. I was coughing. So I'm sorry I missed the last few. Feeling much, much better now. Also, if you're excited about getting older, I can tell you from somebody who is also getting older, I also hurt my knee. If you're asking how I hurt my knee, I hurt my knee giving my cats water. And gave myself a severe knee strain. So yeah, that happened. It wasn't a ski accident. I wasn't in a fight protecting Katie's honor. I was just giving my cats water, and there was a wet spot, and the rest is history. But feeling good all around now, which is great. So thank you, Vivita. I appreciate that. Oh, Beth Carducci in the house. What's up, Beth? How can you find an ERP provider? That we just answered. Thank you, Eileen. Any tips for dealing with anhedonia associated with depression? OCD has been under control for. I wish I could help you with that. It's a little out of my wheelhouse, Zach. I'm so sorry. OCD is barely in my wheelhouse, so I wish I could give you some tips. Maybe tune in. I haven't looked at the schedule. I'm sure Chris is on tomorrow, and maybe Chris and Liz or any guest that he has. I'm sure we'll have some good insights into that. I apologize, but thank you for asking, though. Excuse me. Tamara wrote, I have health OCD, but it's about mental health. I work with clients who have these issues. I'm just struggling with my jobs at times. I was doing good for a month, but this week the anxiety came back. And it does, right? And that's, I think, can be really disconcerting. I don't know why I'm hugging myself. I just saw Tamara and thought I'd hug myself. I love me. I think that it can be tricky, and I think that it waxes and wanes and has flare-ups just like any other disease or disorder can, even if we're doing all the right things. I think that if you're in healthcare, it can be even trickier, right? Because things can be triggering. I think we want to give ourselves lots of love and lots of compassion. And, the anxiety came back, but you have the skills and tools that you know what to do with that anxiety. And we're just going to accept the things as they are and keep moving forward. And I think you'll be good tomorrow. I don't know why I just winked at you, but there it was. It's not a pretty wink. Sandy, it's nice to know one isn't alone going through OCD. Do you believe OCD is caused by traumas or a chemical imbalance or fears? It's a great question. I'll just repeat what I've heard other smart people say, which is, the consensus is most individuals with OCD have a predisposition to it. So it isn't caused by trauma per se. it typically means that, you were already predisposed and whatever trauma occurred brought it out, it activated it. Simultaneously, it absolutely can be genetic. There's a lot of genetic components to family, mothers, fathers, grandparents, and so forth. We see a lot of it tracked back as we look into the OCD. So there is definitely biological. There's conversations about nurture versus nature, right? Is it something learned? What level is it learned, and what level is it already part of nature? So there's that as well. But most of the time, so I was born with it, as far as I know. But other individuals, typically a milestone, a trauma, or a biological milestone tends to trigger OCD. So what do I mean by that? Puberty, giving birth, and obviously a trauma event, death, car accident, injury, something worse. And then, my regular milestones, like going to college, going to high school, getting married, having kids, outside of the female giving birth. Those are all common times that OCD can really rear up and get kind of nasty. Typically, when there's a diagnosis later in life, there can be OCD tendencies or even OCD actions traced back. Oh, wow, I've done that my whole life, right? Or wait a second, I think that thing that I did in college was OCD. That happens more times than not, where suddenly, you get a diagnosis later in life, and then you look back and go, oh, I've been doing that my whole life. So yes, and all of the above, but that's generally the consensus as far as what it's caused by. And I know they're doing a lot of studies, genetics and brain, to really understand, beyond, I don't know that they've identified the gene. I don't want to speak out of turn. Maybe they have. I feel like I should know that. They haven't. They know where it is in the brain, and the area that is activated. But the cause, the pretty strong consensus around all those. But I only played a doctor on TV. I'm not a real doctor, so that's at least my best answer that I can give. I would say that it's at least 13% accurate. So that's a joke. 14%. Oh, we have some crab convo. I miss crabs. Miss Crustacean pageant. Beth, have yours ever entered? Also, I've been to Ocean City, New Jersey. Never mind. That's a great question, Zach. I don't know if you were asking me, but sometimes it can be hard to talk to a psychiatrist or psychologist or somebody without letting OCD, even just today, as I went to the doctor to talk, it was really challenging to, not ask questions that were driven by OCD and really just ask, not even ask questions. I think I asked one question, like, does that mean I'm going to die? But it just is so obvious, like, I'm not comfortable with the doctor saying, well, let's run some tests and see what we see. And then we can make some determinations. And I want to ask, well, what do you think that means? And what do you mean by that? And what do you think's going to happen? And what do you think you're going to see? And do you think you're going to see what you think you're going to see? And, and I thought about asking all those questions, but I just didn't, because what's the point? I'm going to get tests. And then as I just said, I tried to, at least today, to walk that walk and live that life of, like, crossing a bridge. I'll deal with it when I get to that bridge, if I get to that bridge, right? So, like, and also, what does he even know? Like, I was thinking about that too. Like, okay, so the doctor said, it's probably blah, 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 and I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, but he still hasn't seen the test. So even if he said that, what does it buy me? Nothing. Maybe a little comfort until I get the test, but he could say that and the test could be a disaster. Or he could say, I don't know, I'm expecting the worst. The test could be great. So why go through any of it? OCD compulsive always makes it worse. So I was just like, you want some tests and we'll figure out from there? Great. Let's get some tests. I'll be moody for 2 hours, then hopefully get over it, and we'll move on. So that's where I am right now. Talk to me tomorrow when it all changes, but at least that's where I am at the moment. So yeah, it can be challenging, but I think recognizing that you're doing that is really a great first step in trying to mitigate and really just stick with sort of value-driven decisions. Oh, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. All right, working our way through the bottom. Let's see here. Terry, does everyone with OCD need ERP or SSRIs? How does a person know if they need them or if they don't know? That's a great question. It's a really great question, Terry. So, the consensus is the most effective treatment for OCD is a combination of meds and behavioral therapy, evidence-based behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and what's under that is exposure and response prevention. Do you need both? Great question. And I don't know, right? Some people respond to just medication. Some people respond to just treatment, behavioral treatment, and some people really respond to both. And that is really up for a provider to determine, along with you, of course. I think the real question that you have to ask yourself is, if you have a formal diagnosis of OCD and you're contemplating doing something or not doing something, are you living the life that you want to live? Are you functioning the capacity that you want to function at? Are you deriving joy from your experiences? If I hadn't felt restricted, even before it was extremely bad and I was bedridden and all that, if I hadn't felt restricted and things, if I wasn't enjoying things that I should be enjoying, if I was able to function in a way that all my other friends in school were functioning, if it wasn't disrupting my life, then maybe I had OCD and maybe I wouldn't have gotten treatment, right? But the question you have to ask yourself is, how much is it interrupting your function? How much is it disrupting your ability to live your life, to be a mother, father, sister, brother, parent, wife, significant other, right? Your job, your self-care. How much is it interrupting that? Because, I want to do as much as I can to destigmatize whatever treatment you need, whether you need medication, ERP, or both or more, right? If we get diagnosed with an illness, let's say, we get cancer, most people are going to be, okay, what do I got to do? How much stuff do I need to get on? Let's get rid of this thing. Let's knock this in the bud. Like what, all these rounds, what are we going to do? And I like to look at OCD the same way. If you have an opportunity to alleviate the symptoms as much as possible, to give yourself the most full possible life you can live. And I will tell you, you can live a very full life with OCD. I would argue even better than some people without OCD, because we have an insight into life and decisions and thoughts and feelings that most people don't have because they don't go through these treatments. So, the question then becomes is, what kind of life am I living and do I want better? And if you're finding that your OCD, your obsessive thoughts, your compulsions are interfering with your life, generally the consensus is more than an hour a day, right? Then you want to seek some sort of treatment. And if it's very mild, perhaps it can be contained with meds. Or if you don't want meds, you can start with behavioral therapy and see if that allows you to, again, I don't know that there's any, well, there isn't like, any specific rules or regulations to this thing. It's all very personal and, and what you want to do. But I'll tell you this, I think generally professionals will say that meds help 20 to 30% and behavioral treatment helps, 60 to 70 or 70 to 80%. Again, that's not generalized across everyone. That's just a general consensus, but, everyone has different experiences. But, I'll destigmatize the process to say, like, if I'm not on medications and I find that behavioral treatment works really, really well, and I get major symptom reduction, like 70, 80%, but a doctor says to me, I think you can get another 10% if you get on this medication, I'll get on it. Anything that works, right? Anything that works. If I've maxed out one, but there's another opportunity and I can get more alleviation, why would I not want that? Yeah, it's very personal, and you have to work with your treatment provider, psychiatrist and or psychologist. Though psychologists and therapists don't work in the world of medicine or in pharmacology, meds, right? So you generally want to talk to a psychiatrist or primary care physician. Though I would recommend seeing a psychiatrist, and I've always felt that way. They just know a lot more, especially one that has a lot of experience with OCD, because different SSRIs and treatments that are out there, are better for some and not for others, and they may not have that information. So it's good to know. So great question. I like that question a lot. I don't know that I've been asked that question, but I liked it. Thank you, Mom. Ethan did a ton of commercials too. He's a great actor. Accent, whatever. You loved my accents. You never said anything. My mother. Okay, just quickly going down the rest of your comments because I know we're wrapping up on time. Thanks, Vivita. I appreciate it. All right. I think we went through lots of great conversation, though. I appreciate y'all so much. It was good to be back and spend some time with you. Thank you for the great conversation and great questions. As always, what was I going to say? I usually have like this list of announcements, but I don't today. So I'll just say, I think Matt would know. Matt, is there live programming tomorrow? Are you still on? If you're still on, is there live programming tomorrow? I'm so out of the loop. I could look, but do I want to look? I'll look. All right, hold on. We'll get you answers real quick here, unless Matt beats me to it. IOCDF. Well, usually there may not be, because usually when they promote this, they'll say, "Oh, ask the experts." Thank you. Okay, perfect. Oh, with Chris. Okay, so Zach, Anadonia question. Tomorrow's Ask the Expert with Chris. Chris is an expert. I am not. Otherwise, they would call this Ask the Experts. Instead, this is community conversations with a non-expert, which we should add to the name of the stream. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I want to thank the IOCDF for continuing to support, as always. If you're new, please don't forget to subscribe, like, follow on all the social media platforms so you'll get notified when we go live, because we love having you here. Also, as always, the IOCDF is a donor-supported nonprofit, so please consider making a donation. And that's the story. So with that, stay safe. I was about to say, Cash, stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels. Don't let OCD off the hook. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Absolutely. I think that sums it up for everybody. Thanks for showing up, y'all. We help each other. That's what we do. Anyway, don't let OCD off the hook. And have a beautiful evening. And we'll see you. We'll see you in a couple weeks. I think the 20th of September is my next stream. It's all right. We'll see you then. I'm just stalling so I can find this. Good night.